Hi everyone, Chris Savio here from the LogMeIn CES product marketing team, and thank you so much for joining us on our weekly series, our CXNext live weekly series. Sitting in for Ryan Lester as he gets a much deserved week off this week. So I'm joining today, and I have a great guest from our product team for Bolt 360, Akhil Talwar, that we're going to have some great conversation with today around getting your kind of digital services up and running and kind of a strategic approach to it. Before we jump into that, just a little background for our first-time viewers. As I said, it's a weekly series where we really focus on the customer experience, customer support, customer service, practitioners of all these areas to really help you with strategy, maybe discuss some real-world challenges that are going on, and just things that you can kind of do right now to help you focus on making improvements in these areas. We hope that a lot of our viewers, kind of just take away one or two things that they can maybe go back to their day job with, they can learn from, innovate on, or just take steps to make improvements for their customer experience or even their employee experience. So that's what we're all about. Hopefully you continue to join us. Go back and look at some of our other weekly videos if you haven't had a chance to yet. So with that out of the way, as I said, we got our guest with us today, Akhil. Thanks for joining me today, Akhil.
Thank you, Chris. Pleasure to be talking with all of you today.
Yeah, and so I think our topic today is, I think, extremely timely in everything that's been going on. We're a few months at this point into, what everyone's kind of quoting as their new normal, but this kind of uncertainty and just changing experiences due to COVID-19. And I think, a lot of businesses have, been doing a great job of figuring out work situations with their support teams, figuring out new ways that they have to interact with their customers, putting a lot of band-aids on things to solve for kind of short-term problems that they're running into. And so what we've kind of taken some steps to do is we've built out over the past few weeks what we think is a pretty strong kind of roadmap or playbook for some businesses to help them both today and for the future. In different steps for helping businesses kind of build up their digital capabilities, in kind of a more structured approach and not trying to take on everything at once. Because we know that's difficult for businesses right now. There's a few kind of burning issues that they need to solve. But what we wanted to try and do is really give people some insights and say, hey, there's some issues you could probably solve for right now, but don't do it at the detriment of maybe what you're going to do in the future, right? You should start looking now to say, what can we do now to continue to build upon to make improvements for the future, when we come out in whatever looks differently in 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, 18, whatever it is. You don't want to invest in a lot of things right now and then turn around, in 12 months and have to kind of pull everything out. So with this playbook that we built together, it really does kind of aim to say, hey, here's step one that you should take. And this could solve a lot of what you're doing now. Here's step 2, 3, 4. And continue to build on each other. And hopefully, in a few months, we can add to this of step 6, 7, or 8 as businesses continue to improve and technology continues to improve. So that's what we wanted to discuss today, is this kind of, digital engagement strategy playbook. So I brought Akhil in to kind of provide some really great kind of real world examples. He's constantly having conversations with our customers, our prospects, hearing from other industry experts. So he's going to give us some good tangible examples of what to do for each of these phases. If you want some more details, we do have kind of this light ebook that's available now that you can go into and take a look at to get some more details and share it with some others. So with all of that background out of the way, let's jump right into the discussion, Akhil. So the first step that we wanted to help businesses with right now is what we're kind of calling fortifying your digital self-service. I think right now this is probably more important than ever with a lot of the not only uncertainty of your customers, but the uncertainty of how your customers are engaging with you and when they're engaging with you, with things that are rapidly kind of changing or evolving, whether it's for policies or procedures for financial institutions, or when stores are potentially reopening or towns are letting things reopen, or where workforces are going to be. 1 week to the next is always different. And so you don't know whether you're going to start getting this large influx of calls that's resulting in these 3, 4, 5 hour wait times. And so what you need to do is kind of build up some self-service capabilities to kind of deflect a little bit of that volume that's coming in, to kind of alleviate some of the headaches that maybe that are sitting on your agents. So that's what we think is definitely the first step in this, is really kind of putting your finger in that hole where the water's coming in, and then figuring out what you can do from there. So, Akhil, let's chat a little bit about that one. So, do you have any examples, maybe some businesses or companies that have taken these steps recently or in the past few months that are kind of doing it right?
Yeah, and before we go into a specific example, I think we can all relate with this. As consumers, we can see the changes that have been brought on by COVID-19. There are genuine concerns about how do you get in touch with the business? How do you maybe modify your service? How do you like conserve your expenses, right, and maximize your savings? People are looking to adjust their financial plans, their investments, where their paycheck is going, even find out about their stimulus, check that they might have applied for. So we're seeing like definitely some industries like telecom, financial services, banking, and I think travel, of course, did have a lot of spike in, the traffic initially, right around the time of the pandemic. But it's quite across the board. We're seeing doubling, if not tripling, of contact volume for a lot of our customers. One example specifically to that first step, I think that you talked about, and we also have in this playbook, is that if you look at that low-hanging fruit about all the repetitive questions that customers are coming to your website, I think of this company, which is an online grocery and food delivery service in the Northeast. And if you're like me, a lot of us are really concerned about going out to the store and, buying produce or even all your essentials. In fact, kind of to talk about that change that is happening, just about a couple of weeks ago, I helped my grandmother make her first online purchase, and it was buying groceries. And if you think about it, we've always thought of like online being this next, frontier for a lot of consumers. And I think what we're seeing is like there's this fast forward, metaphorical fast forward button that has been hit in terms of adoption that is making these changes, which are otherwise further out in the horizon. Non-digital natives are becoming digital natives, I think, in that sense, right? Like my grandmom is not that classic cohort of a user in the past who would have been that digital native. So, again, coming back to that example of online grocery services, this particular customer had seen a huge spike in volume in their business, which is great, but it also came with a lot of headache for them because they offered, they already had a bunch of digital and traditional channels. So they had phone, they also had email and chat. But that sheer volume just meant that they had to keep adding human beings at a faster rate than they could hire, train, and deploy. What that meant was they had this growing backlog of contacts, and that was just simply untenable. And it resulted in, poor customer experience. There were long wait times and even missed revenue, right? If you're not able to get the answers, you're probably going to go find a different online, site that can maybe deliver groceries or answer your questions. So what they did was they decided to deploy a self-service AI-based FAQ widget. They put it on all their primary places, so their primary pages as well as their contact us pages. And what this did was it acted as an effective way to manage their contact volumes, because through an iterative process, they were able to identify and curate responses to some 40 odd questions that were driving the bulk of their traffic or the bulk of their contacts. And they were really pleased with the results, because with those top 40 questions, they were able to achieve a 70% self-service rate, which was really amazing. It helped reduce the burden on their contact center, improve the customer experience. Now, of course, they still had, some users come in through the phone or chat or email, but what it did was it helped free up capacity by promoting that self-service channel as the primary conduit, and kind of moves from some of those hotspot journeys off from their website. So it's a really good example of something which didn't take a tremendous amount of effort, but yet gave a very big impact, and was something that they could immediately deploy and see the results of.
Yeah, I think that's great, and I think a few of the key things that you said there, around it doesn't have to be a big lift right now, right? You don't have to go in, and you shouldn't. I mean, frankly, you should never try and solve all the problems under the sun. But really, right now, too, to the point you made, there's probably a handful of things that are coming up more frequently And just removing those, I mean, I know myself as a consumer, I would much prefer to quickly get that answer. I've looked around. There's some items that I purchased pre-pandemic that trying to find what return policies have updated has, been almost a Sherlock Holmes affair, going to some people's websites to navigate around and find it. So small things like that, where maybe it's just policies that are going to constantly change, or small things that are coming through with shipping information or stuff that's frequently getting impacted right now. Just solving those in easy, lightweight ways and getting them in front of people is, I think, very important. And then you can worry about all the other stuff later. That's great. So I think the next step then, so now you've invested in some of that, right? You've gotten some of those that, self-service content up there, digital channels, maybe getting some of, being able to redirect some people. But now that it's there, the next step that we want to talk to business about is you want to amplify that digital support, right? You've invested in this self-service that you've had. Maybe you've started to invest a little more in digital channels. Maybe you did that obviously prior to this pandemic, but people just aren't going there yet. So you have to take some steps to maybe redirect and get people into those digital channels. To the comment I think you made, Akhil, on in the last point was, with your grandmother, right? There are people that are willing to, maybe you say our customers don't want to be there. I think if you ask them in certain ways, or you prompt them in certain ways, they're going to be more than willing to go there, because it might end up being a better experience for them, right? It might be faster, it might be, self-service capabilities, whatever it is. But I think it's important then to amplify that, not just in getting people there, but maybe in the tools that once they are there that you're using. So can you talk about any customers maybe that you've seen that have taken these steps, or other examples that you noticed similar to the last grocery company?
Yeah, and just to highlight the pain that people are facing. So it's quite common, like customers aren't maybe fully aware, and their go-to reaction is, all right, let me pick up the phone and call up this company. But if you think about the situation of what's happening at home these days, is people are juggling their work life, they're juggling their personal lives, they have loved ones to take care of, and nobody really likes to be waiting in a queue with their ear pressed to the phone. Only if they can get a quicker response, right? It's just that some people just aren't aware, like they're not that digital native, as I spoke about earlier. But what you can do in those situations, and an example that comes to mind is a large global consumer electronics brand that everyone knows of. They're synonymous for high quality products and really great customer service. With the pandemic, they had to shift their global workforce 100% remote. Which is something they hadn't really planned for at scale. Like they did have some pockets of remote workforce, but this customer had already put a lot of emphasis on digital channel adoption. So they had deployed chatbots, they had messaging, they had chat, they had email. So it was great because they were able to handle their increased volume quite well. But what they saw was still an opportunity to drive users towards consuming the digital channels over voice, right? They couldn't guarantee that they'd be able to provide a great voice experience from a work from home agent. Not all of their agents were able to make that transition to support voice, because voice, requires bandwidth, requires, a really quiet surroundings, which not everyone can have at home. So that was one part of their problem. And then the other thing was also, I would say, more of an opportunity. They saw an opportunity to fill a void that was left once their brick and mortar stores had closed down. So what they did was they decided to promote their phone IVR to messaging and chatbot flows. So they'd already started doing some of this pre-COVID, but they just saw a huge uptick in customer adoption, where people clearly realized that, yeah, this is the better option. Let me start, not wait in that phone queue and move to that messaging or the chatbot flow. And it helped tackle 25% of the call volume just by doing this effectively. And if you think about it, this would have otherwise been a high cost. Sometimes these are very repetitive engagements, and they moved this now to a lower cost digital channel. So this is one part of the equation where they try to shift a lot of those IVR to phone users to digital and self-service channels. But on the other hand, as I spoke about earlier, they also decide to proactively identify high-value engagements and offer a video chat experience. So they wanted to provide like this product demonstration option, which otherwise was done in store. But obviously, like now that they didn't have their stores open, they had idle capacity. They had these agents that could do these kinds of demonstrations. So what this helped is really drive those top line sales conversions. So again, if you think about it, it's not just about shifting from high cost to low cost, but it's also looking at being able to shift from low value to high value engagements and using the right channel for the right means. So digital has a lot to offer. It's not just that it's all about deflection or pushing your users away to just serve them themselves. It could mean that you redeploy or human agents in a better way and use automation the right way to get the best of both worlds.
Awesome. Yeah, I think those are really both two great examples. It's great to see one company doing it. But yeah, I think the combination of both amplifying, as far as we were saying, right, to promote that there is this space where you can receive other types of support, and amplify as far as build up the tools that you have, which is going to come up again in another phase of this as well. But they kind of tackled both of that kind of in this early one because they saw the need, they saw the problem, and it made sense for them then. For other companies, maybe it's just redirecting, right? Getting people off of that phone or trying to get them from email to say, hey, by the way, we have, this other channel available where you might be able to get your answer more quickly. I think the key thing with however you do that, though, is obviously the transparency and letting people know, right? You're not just trying to get rid of them, to deflect them. That's a bad word, right? It's, the position is the benefit for them of like, hey, this is unfortunately high call volumes and it's taking, might be 50, 60, 90 minutes for you to get an answer. There's this other channel where you may be able to help yourself faster, or there will be agents there as well. So I think it's a combination of both that you need to make sure that you're not just saying, this is 2 hours here, go to this other channel.
Right, absolutely, yeah. And I think that goes to the point that, you want to make those, even if you're offering like self-service, you want to make it very seamless to transition from that self-service to a human being, so that it's easy both for that end user and that agent to follow. So you're not really causing frustration or repetition for those users. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Something else that you mentioned in there that I think is really important and actually sends us nicely into the next phase was about kind of those agents, right? The employees that are the front line and supporting them. We'll call this next phase kind of empowering your employees. So you have your fortification, you have amplifying it, and now the actual humans that are behind it, you need to empower them to be able to do their jobs well. And I think now more than ever, in a situation where there are people working from home, people working uncertain hours, different hours of the day. I know I have a young son. Akhil also has an even younger child, a son as well. That it's difficult to know when you're going to be available or not available, and with homeschooling, or if you're supporting a parent, or you have roommates. So you need to make sure that not just having that flexible work environment, but you're giving your employees the tools and ability, to support the customers in that flexibility. So we wanted to focus this next part on, well, what can you do for these employees that maybe aren't going to have time to sit in on constant training updates or review long policy changes that are quickly going on, right? The speed with which things are changing from a customer-facing perspective, those answers are changing for those employees that are providing them as well. And so you need to make sure you're arming them with all the information tools, and you're providing, appropriate training as needed, rather than just bombarding them and making them feel like, I don't know the answer. I'm going to have to get back to you. I have to transfer you to someone else, which then just backs up other queues and creates terrible customer experiences as well. So let's dive into this one a little bit more, Akhil. So empowering the employees. Do we have any customers that you've seen that have started doing a good job of this over the past couple of weeks or months?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I spoke at the beginning about, how some of these changes have impacted the financial services industry. And the example that comes to mind over here is actually a mid-sized credit union. And, what they were dealing with is, they're already gone down this journey. They had some of the digital channels. They even had a chatbot for their end customers. But, it's not always easy to retrain your users. Some users were still calling in. And also, it's a very personal matter. Sometimes people are concerned about things that they just used to otherwise have a direct conversation with a financial advisor walking into their bank or their credit union. So what they were dealing with now was, they needed to arm their newly distributed workforce with easy to access information, But the problem was that they had a very complex content management framework that just couldn't scale. They were using things like SharePoint. They had like these volumes and volumes of information. It was organized in a very particular way, but it was really hard to find. So what they ended up having to deal with, though, post coronavirus, was that they had a huge influx of new topics, right? These are topics that otherwise people would come into, maybe the walk in into the physical locations, talk with an advisor. But even, these were like completely new topics that no one knew how to deal with, such as, how do you handle your ACH stimulus check payments, and how do you update your IRS information, or branch closures, and continually like evolving policies, right? This wasn't just a one and done thing, but things were changing every single day as the deal around the stimulus package was being finalized. There was newer information that just kept on coming through, and even now continues to. So what they did was, very interestingly, was within 5 days, they actually deployed an employee-facing chatbot. So it would help people, no matter what channel that someone comes in from, whether they're coming in through the phone or even online. And what that helped those employees with was, quick information so that they could look up, this information while serving their customers over the phone or online. And what they were able to do was they were able to identify about like 85% of their frequently asked questions were addressed via the chatbot. So it served up over thousands of engagements. And this was really great because it exceeded their employees' expectations. It improved satisfaction rate, all in these times of uncertainty where you're dealing with these changing policies, and you had this very clunky and hard to find kind of knowledge framework. So they moved that into our chatbot, and they really made it very easy for employees who are on the phone or maybe online, and they just want to be able to provide the accurate information. Consistency, I think that's the key thing, right? You don't want to leave it to each of your individual agents to make these superhuman efforts, but rather, arm them with the common, consistent response so that everyone gets the same answers.
Yeah, I think that's this is one that I've spoken about before, that I think is just an important step in general, that kind of empowerment and arming your employees the right way, right? They're the face of your company, for better or worse, whether you like it or not. They're the ones that can make a very bad situation turn into a customer that's going to be loyal for life if they're able to do it right. So you need to kind of give them all the tools that they can possibly have, whether it is technology or information. And actually, at our CXNext event that we had earlier in May, I moderated a panel where they were saying exactly that, Akhil. I mean, a lot of these pieces of information of like, what are different things we can give to people. And I think what something like this and investing in this type of phase does for you as well is, if you're looking much more longer term in the future, and maybe you're more likely to have remote support teams, and you want to widen where you can hire people from. Well, now you have a much easier way to onboard and train people and bring them up to speed, rather than be sitting in classrooms and always being trained in the office. So I think investing here is definitely going to have a lot of long-term returns on the quality of your team and how you continue to bring on new hires and continue to update them on things that are rapidly changing.
Absolutely.
So the next phase we want to get to, and I think we have two more that we want to tackle here, and I think this next one is going to warrant maybe its own kind of breakout session, maybe CXNext Live. So I think I'd like to have you back to dive into this one specifically, but maybe we can scratch the surface on it a little, is what we kind of call, optimizing your support strategy. So you've got your self-service, you've now got some digital channels, you're getting people there, you've kind of given the tools and information to those employees that are supporting it. And now you want to start this loop, right? You've gotten the machine in place, and now you want to start cranking things out. So you want to take your learnings from all of this and continue to optimize the experience of your customers, the experience of your employees. There's definitely different ways to do it. So you have any kind of high-level thoughts or examples that you want to touch on for this, and then we can kind of dive deeper into a later episode?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, like this is that phase where if you deploy a really powerful AI solution that presents to you insights and, makes these insights actionable, really what you have at your disposal is the ability to identify trends and even surface gaps in your users' experiences, even before you might have like heard of it, whether it is a newly developed change. Maybe it's something like happening in the real world that you might not be aware of, right? It could be a supply chain disruption if you're a retailer or someone who's like shipping a physical product, or it could be something as benign as your website has some issues and people are falling into some non-ideal paths. So this is really a good solution that can help you continually optimize the experience. And there are many examples that fall in this category of something that you want to be doing on an ongoing basis, where you're able to monitor and see your customers and employees' journeys and look at it through this kind of experiential dashboard. And the outcomes from which can either be identifying greater opportunities for self-service to a customer, maybe seeing that they struggled in some places, and then you can now maybe offer them up some content if it's like a low value but repetitive experience, like I mentioned earlier. But it also lets you identify higher value moments that today maybe have a poor experience, and maybe it's a revenue miss. You're not really taking advantage of something that maybe a customer is asking about. I don't know, could be asking about like a coupon code or something, or maybe they're like close to purchasing something, or maybe they're just about to decide on signing up for a service, but they're asking some of these leading questions that maybe you need to, in that case, change your strategy. Instead of just having a bot, maybe you want to be able to proactively have a human being engage with them, and maybe take it to a very specific team that is meant to close a sale or retain a customer or whatever, what have you. So that's, I think, that optimization phase where you start collecting these insights and then you can really start taking action upon them.
Nice. Yeah. And I think this is an area that from the Bold side, as a business, we're very passionate about. And we think this is where the strength of your solution and making your organization better and continuing to see value from what you've purchased to support your customers or employees is really important. So we can definitely kind of double click on a lot of that when we connect again. The last area that we want to wrap up on here is our phase 5, which is looking even farther to the future. Right now, you want to continue to evolve what you've invested in. Take the learnings, like Akhil was saying, from your kind of optimization. Take what you've learned by getting maybe some of that self-service out there, and kind of now push that self-service forward. Push that forward by different channels or different tools or different connections. And this could be very different based on your industry or use cases. So this is really where it does, require some homework to understand what's that next best thing, what's that customer journey where we can have the most impact, and make that investment from the simple things that you've tackled to maybe now some of the more complicated. We were chatting a little before this about a customer that is doing just this by evolving channels. You want to touch a little bit on that, Akhil?
Yeah, so again, like in this case, this is a customer that is in the luxury retail space, and what they saw was an opportunity to deploy more advanced conversational chatbot use cases. And just to give a little context or background, this was a customer who was already leveraging chatbots. They had live chat, they had email, and post-COVID, what they also decided to do was double down on messaging. So they launched WhatsApp as a channel, which was great for them. They started getting a lot of amazing conversations with international global customers, because it is a channel that is asynchronous, so it's available 24/7. And then once they started getting a lot of these conversations, they analyzed as part of that phase 4, what are some of the optimizations that they can derive. And they saw an opportunity where they could even further push the envelope in terms of self-service on one area. And then also like a higher engagement kind of opportunity in another area. So the self-service one they saw was that they had customers often asking questions about, where is my order, or how do I track something, and things which they hadn't like. They started off with a simpler bot, which was just maybe answering like general questions, but then they identify like there's an opportunity for, okay, maybe let's develop a personalized flow wherein it's able to inquire about the customer, look up the information, and then even like pull up like their order details and provide it over a messaging or a chatbot channel. So that's kind of the next step, and not everyone takes that as their first phase, because often you have to then go tie it into your own back-end systems, got to, connect it to some downstream system that you might have at your end that you need to expose, which is where, most companies take that next step, is doing those type of personalized transactions. And then the other thing that they also wanted to do was start developing, from a higher value engagement standpoint, they also wanted to start developing a profile of their customers. They had like their own kind of CRM of sorts, where they're collecting, purchase information, previous interaction information, and then they want to then be able to market out to these customers based on their engagements and based on their conversations. Like one of their use cases, like customers would inquire about like a newly announced product or something that a designer announced. And, it can sometimes take some time before they, from an announcement on a runway or a fashion show, to it actually being available for purchase. So that's where they started wanting to take advantage of being able to collect people's information, and hey, we can let you know as soon as it's in stock, or would you like someone to reach back out to you? So again, like they're starting to look at some of those more personalized use cases where it's a combination of both self-service, but then also like revenue opportunities to be proactive and drive a better, longer lasting customer journey.
Yeah, that's awesome. I also didn't know that you knew so much about runway and fashion culture, so that's nice to hear. But no, I think those are great examples, and to your point, I mean, I think it can be many different things. Maybe it's a different use case within the current support channel. Maybe it's a completely different part of a journey, right? A sales component. But I completely agree too with the fact of have that wish list of what you would like this technology that you deploy to do, but take the simple, easy steps first, which you're going to start seeing the return on, and getting that out there and getting your customers comfortable with engaging with you maybe in this new channel, right? Rather than putting a lot of time, 6, 8, 12 months into investing in this big thing, you roll it out, and it takes a little while for customers to get comfortable with it, and you think maybe it's fallen flat. So I think there's a method to the madness of kind of taking that more structured approach as well, which I think is really important, like you said. So that's our kind of five steps that we pulled together, and hopefully, you folks have learned a little bit from it. As I said, check out the ebook that we have available that provides a little more details and a little more kind of examples in it as well. It can be a good thing to share with some of your peers to get some conversations going and thoughts going. So thank you everyone for taking some time out of your day to join us. Akhil, thank you so much for joining us. It's always great to have you on.
Thank you. Pleasure's mine.
All right, so until next week, when maybe I'll be back in, or Ryan, I guess we'll see. Everyone stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll be talking to you soon.